everybody. Russ and my Hammers 11. Hope you're safe and well. Hope you enjoyed your summer, those 2 days. That's it now. By the looks of it, thank God I was sweating buckets. Hope everybody, me and you, same, James. Hope everyone is safe and well. New channel, please consider subscribing. Keep there, obviously we're keeping going during this weird off season. And every day we'll be having, obviously, interviews going up with fans and guests and players and whoever we can basically get on. Today's guest, a veteran at West Ham, 20 seasons he's been at the club, being the audio describer to all the blind, not deaf people, all the blind fans at West Ham.
Common mistake.
Exactly, yeah. At West Ham, it's James Datson. How you doing, James?
Yeah, hi Ross. Very well, thank you. Glad to be here. Love the channel. I think it's been an absolute pleasure, and I think not just for West Ham fans. I think it's a really good idea you had all those sort of months ago at the start of lockdown and that, and how it's developed. It's been very good. But yeah, I'm well. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much. No, it's funny as well because a lot of my friends who are not West Ham fans subscribe to the channel and comment on it because they haven't got that. Do you know what I mean? I think we always think that West Ham family, the West Ham fan base, are unique, and I think it's even more so because my friends who are Tottenham fans and Arsenal fans, they go, we watch it because we haven't got nothing like that, and it's lovely just to share all the stories, and particularly.
And I think what you've probably found, sorry Ross, is that a lot of the fans of other teams have probably got our best players. We sort of developed them. That's what makes them probably think and so not many clubs can sort of do this and get so many people to choose so many players.
Exactly. I mean, it's true. I think we've had over something like 200 different player names have come up since we've had 150 odd episodes. It's been quite mental. James, how's things been with you in this sort of weird world we currently live in?
Yeah, it's been not too bad, to be honest. Like, obviously, although I've been 20 seasons at West Ham, I sort of work in education, so I work in a school. So obviously, we went into lockdown in March, and I've been doing various bits. But missing the football big time. Everyone who knows me knows that I follow a lot of football, and obviously West Ham as well. So it's been quite a difficult sort of not having that regular sort of moments before a game of thinking like this will make my weekend or make my and all that. So sometimes it's been good because you sort of try and enjoy most of the week, without having the typical sort of West Ham letdown. But then you sometimes sort of think like, what will they eventually do? And then there was that panic about, will the season continue? Where are we going to fit? Are we going to survive and all that? But yeah, as I think being a West Ham fan probably helped me a bit, really, because we have a lot of disappointment and a lot of things to get through. So I think I sort of channeled a bit of my supporting West Ham for so long into sort of how to get through lockdown. There's going to be ups and downs and all that, but we managed it, and we're where we are, and it's not going to be normal for a long time, but at least things are getting back slowly and sure.
Baby steps at the moment,
thing,
and you're right. I know exactly what you mean. Like that Saturday when you come in, and like as you said, it could be a great day, it could be not so great day, and it's like I always remember like series link of like match of the day, and it's like just delete that one this week, We'll keep that one because we've won. Yeah. We've got a hard-earned draw, but
it's an early night. It's an early night. I don't need to watch it. Don't worry about it. I can have an early night.
You can watch the wife. You can watch I don't know, Married at First Sight. Right? Yeah, Married at First Sight, Australia, wherever it is. Yeah. It's so true. But I know, and it is weird. And I mean, obviously for you as well. It's. I mean, I was fortunate, obviously, because they still needed obviously the music being played and stuff. But for you, for 20 seasons, it's the same as the fans, really. But even when you're working there, it's a bit different. Not being there for the last sort of half dozen games must have been really, really strange.
Yeah, it's been really sort of difficult, really, because obviously I'm. It's a privilege to do the sort of role that I do, and sort of over the years get to know a lot of my listeners who have been with me either from the beginning or have joined over the years. So just trying to keep them in touch with what's going on, and I'm lucky enough to contact a lot of them throughout the sort of lockdown, because it was sort of interesting to see whether we could try and set something up if the season was to restart, and obviously knowing that I wouldn't make the cut because the numbers are very limited to getting into the stadium, but we managed to sort of like keep in touch just before a game and after a game to get their views and keep them occupied.
Oh, brilliant.
And obviously putting them into sort of like other sort of radio stations and things so they can have that sort of link and TV coverage or radio coverage. But yeah, it was a bit of a difficult one really, because I sort of wanted to be there and finish the season, but obviously it wasn't to be. But obviously to make sure that the listeners at least knew where to go to get some sort of service and that. But
yeah, no, totally. Yeah, it is strange. I mean, it's the same as me. If God forbid, I know I'm on holiday, and because it's always, you take a risk, don't you? I mean, particularly you working in, you don't know when and games get changed, or a work conference, and maybe once or twice a season. I feel like my left hand's been taken off, because I can just see, and I was like, I should be there, And it's so bizarre.
It's a real tough one. I'm lucky enough. The school I work at is on the sort of train line that's like 12 minutes into Stratford. So when we moved to the stadium, if I had like a parents' evening or something kind of midweek, I'm sort of rushing through thinking, right, nice, lovely.
Yeah, very good, yeah.
And I'm jumped from the train straight down. Because you're right, because if over the 20 seasons, I think I've only missed a handful.
Yeah.
That through various reasons, being on holiday, and like you say, the game gets changed for TV reasons or whatever, or things like that. But you do sort of miss it. So I have missed sort of them last few games that we had at home. And obviously, one or two, they were important games. They were all important. And, it would have been nice to have experienced just seeing what it would have been like as well, being in a...
Yeah.
I know, like you said over some of your, your other sort of links and that you've done with other people and your sort of video clips, that it does seem weird. With no one there, and then
it is strange, but I'm sort of used to. I'm not used to it, because that sounds horrible. But we did the under-23 games, a few of them there at the London Stadium, and there's only about 200 people there. But obviously they're fans, really. Well, they're sort of friends of the players or family, and a few die-hard fans go. But it is weird, because like you're thinking there's a couple of £100 million worth of player out there, and you just got 30 journalists. It's just really weird. It's really strange, but I'm not being funny. I get home in 25 minutes on the.
But that's the only thing I was thinking of, like you and other people I knew were going. I said, I bet they haven't got that sort of, and then I noticed that you could park more or less on the stadium.
So basically, so exactly. They transformed the. I don't know what you call that. Basically, with the champion stones on all around there, they basically that was the start, or media and auxiliary and all the staff car parks, because obviously they don't want necessarily people travelling in on the trains either. So so it's weird, It's just you just pull up and literally I'm parked outside the stadium, and it's strange, but I'm there and there's Paul Parker next to me or something, because it's all just it's a hodgepodge of people. It's very bizarre. But based on what I've read from other journalists and things that are saying that London Stadium is actually a breeze to get through in terms of it's very well organised. I know people criticise things about the organised, but actually the way they've organised it is fantastic.
I think the size of the stadium and how it gave that, and I would have expected that it would have been probably well organised, and you had the space and the sort of bits and pieces to change to make it easier for people going in. I could have been interested to see it, what it would have been like if we were up to Park still.
Yeah, it'd be impossible. The old girl would have been impossible, wouldn't it? Could you imagine where they're going to park everyone? Do you know what I mean? It's like. God, I had to park 4 streets away at the old when I was used to be there before.
Right. Yeah.
And I was there 5 hours early, and I still had to park, 4 streets down. But it's funny, and the one thing that makes me laugh, and it's one thing that a lot of people pick up on, is in the lift. So obviously when you get, because obviously we know you go to the same area as me, we have to get the lift up to the top, and it's like some horrible silver lifts, aren't they? And they've got they've got 2 stickers. Obviously, you can only have 2 people in there at a time because the lifts are quite long, and the stickers basically say where to put your feet, and you're basically facing the wall. So both of you potentially are facing the wall. It's just so weird. But obviously, no one does it. But it's like it's like
That sort of reminds me of when it was the norm in them lifts at the stadium. You normally get about 20 or 30 people.
You would, but because you get and then there's always a chef coming in with a stack of 20 servings,
a trolley full of
pushing them all in as well. This bit of banter, James, it's only relevant for about 3 people.
Yeah, I know.
But it's an insight into the world that we live in.
Yeah,
but Yeah, no, it is weird. And obviously, as you said, we're going to be at least 3 or 4 games before we even
Yeah. Oh,
consider any
definitely.
fans
Yeah,
coming
of
in.
course.
I'd be surprised, to be honest. I just don't think. I think even the fans there who come in, I don't know whether they'll. If I was offered a ticket, would I go? I don't
Yeah.
know, because at the end of the day, it's a different atmosphere. You've got to, you won't be able to
And
sing.
it's not something you can sort of just go and see what it's like and then make up your mind. You either sort of go and you try it, and then your expectation is that, like, you've got to wear a mask, you've got to do this. So it's going to be an interesting when they eventually think, right, well, we get 20-30% fans in to begin with, or whatever it
Yeah,
is, who actually takes up that sort of ticket and who goes in and how. Again, just going back to a positive of the stadium is that it's got the size to sort of
it is. Yeah, yeah. We
do that,
sort. I had a bit of a
and to
I had a bit
sort
of a
of
go
like
in it. Was
have
yeah,
sort of people coming in from different areas of around the stadium. You
yeah,
know what I mean? So I would imagine, again, similar to what we were saying earlier about how they've done it for the media and everyone, it will be done well, but it's still everyone's choice and their own choice to decide whether to
totally,
go ahead.
absolutely,
And
totally.
then even when you do, you sort of think, like, is it worth it? What sort of atmosphere
Yeah.
you're going to get?
But I
Yeah.
noticed it was the MLS. So obviously they're doing it in the bubble, aren't they, in Orlando?
Mm.
And they had, I think it was Orlando. They had fans in the other day. I noticed for the. It was a bit controversial because they booed them taking a knee or something
Oh,
like
right,
that, and
right.
FC Dallas or someone like that was playing,
Uh-huh.
and there was a number of fans a few thousand fans already in there. So, and I read the other day about the cricket, well, not the cricket, the snooker. They're looking at bringing, because they were going to use that as a
They
test,
were, yeah.
and I think the final they may well be having some fans in there. I don't know.
Mm.
But we'll see. What will be will be. But that's
Exactly.
that's not to do with this channel. This
Exactly.
channel is all about nostalgia.
No, yes.
All the Hammers chat and Irons United, West Ham fact, they do all the topical stuff, and Exeter's
No,
podcast.
yeah,
I do
we'll let them,
nostalgia.
but they're all good. They're all good. Let them get on with that. They
Love them
can do
all,
all that.
love
They're
them all,
brilliant. They're
love them all,
brilliant.
and
So
we do some stuff for them soon, collaboratively across
no,
all the
good,
channels soon. So
good.
that'd be quite good for charity. But anyway, James, the first question I always ask everyone, he says, having chatted for 13 minutes already, is why West Ham? Why is West Ham your club, mate?
Why West Ham? Right. I grew up in sort of Chadwell Heath,
Yeah,
literally not that far from the training ground in Chadwell Heath. Uh, I've got an older brother, as most people may be aware of. I grew up. West Ham was my local club. And I can remember sort of like the FA Cup final with Trevor Brooking scoring against Arsenal. So it was sort of like, and it was an easy game to get to, an easy stadium as well. From where I lived in Chadwell Heath, it was literally a little walk, one bus all the way down to Barking, through Barking, East Ham, and then you're there. So it was relatively easy to get to that game.
yeah,
And then the atmosphere. I always remember, as a sort of teenager, you sort of
yeah,
like, you're standing on the North Bank, and if you were in the middle of that North Bank up high, the atmosphere was just amazing. And
sure,
like, it was just that sort of like, we never quite, even from a younger age, we never quite made it. I remember sort of like, FA Cup sort of games when we beat Everton, Stuart Slater, Colin Foster. We had many
yeah,
sort of good moments, but they never really progressed,
yeah,
And that's kind of sort of like, where I started and sort of stayed with, really.
yeah,
And luckily enough, where I lived, there was a few other West Ham fans as well. And then you could tell the sort of like who liked football because they supported their local club. I always had a few friends who sort of went for like the sort of Man United, the sort of and all of that. But so it sort of started, lucky enough, like living local to the training ground, and then that was it. And then I was just hooked, and then went with my brother for many years, and obviously still do, because he still comes to
yeah.
the games, but obviously I don't get to see him as much.
Of course.
But yeah, so that's why, from being more or less born and living right on the doorstep of the training ground.
Yeah. And then how did the whole thing happen with your being sort of the descriptor for the
Yeah,
deaf
see,
guys?
I often get asked this, and it's a really sort of, because I always say, even to this day, I always say it's a privilege, and it's to be able to still follow your club and sit in a stadium and like talk about it. It's just amazing. It's just absolutely amazing. But what happened is, as I said, I went with my brother. We used to stand in the North Bank. Then the Bobby Moore stand got built, so we went to sit there. And then in the late 90s, around sort of 97, there was a well-known sort of drink company that were looking for unusual fans.
Yeah.
And so they contacted the club, and the club said, "Oh, we've got this guy who's blind, but he goes with his brother, and his brother sits next to him, and he talks about the game and tells his brother what's going on and all of that." So they got in touch, and they did an advert, which you can still sort of, you can see on YouTube and all of that. And that was about 97, and it came out for the World Cup in 98, and it was part of the sort of the 4 or 5 adverts for their campaign.
Yeah.
It then got really well received, not just by West Ham, because it showed basically me sitting with my brother and another friend of his, and we talked about the game, and we had like the atmosphere of the game, and we were describing it so that my brother could still feel part of it, even though he couldn't see what was going on.
Sure, yeah.
Matt could still feel part of that atmosphere. And it just took off from there. And then within sort of about a season, West Ham was sort of like approached me and said, "Look, we've had loads of people contact the club saying, oh, they've got a relative that's, blind or visually impaired. Can they come to the game? How, because I think it just, no pun intended, I think it opened the eyes to people that,
totally.
Doesn't matter what disability you have. Because, my brother Matt, he still gets asked like, "Oh, why'd you go? Because you can't see." But he goes because he's a West Ham fan.
Yeah.
And he wants to be part of that, being a fan, to get the atmosphere, and sort of like, be part of that club. So that's where it all sort of came from. And then I did you're in my sort of 11, you'll hear about it a little bit more.
Sure.
I did a sort of test run for the club. And then they said, "Yeah, we really like," and then the season beginning 2000, 2001, so September 2000, I started and never looked back really. And it's just developed as the years go on. You sort of, the systems, the equipment, how you sort of branch out. And, I then got in touch with the RNIB, the Royal National Institute for the Blind, and tried to get it to other clubs, and other clubs have developed it and taken it on now. Because you could just, a lot of clubs have it, but they link it into sort of like local radio, which is good or whatever, but it has to be a little bit more descriptive.
Yeah, totally.
As you'll hear as I go on with my Hammers 11, it sort of highlights, I can talk about the game and commentate like you hear on 5 Live and all the other talk sport and all of that.
Yeah.
But you have to give them a little bit more because they're in the stadium.
Yes.
So the people that are listening to me are actually physically in the stadium. So there has to be that sort of like a little bit more of information, a little bit more colour.
Yeah.
What's going on and all of that. So so that's how it started. And then
cool.
Then I'm still doing it. So
I know.
So there must be something working. So.
Yeah, I know. And so how many? So obviously before lockdown, how many? Because I'm just interested. How many blind fans do you broadcast to?
Yeah. So it's now we're in the new stadium. We we can get a little bit more sort of the headsets. There's basically a very simple system. We are, funnily enough, before lockdown, we were actually tendering out to companies to update the system, because now we've been in the stadium, we needed to really go big,
ramp it up,
go big or go home really. And the club were really going to invest in it, but then we went to lockdown, so that's on hold. But generally, it's just a little sort of, it's like a little headset, just not about as big as your hand. You put your headphones in, and they can sit anywhere in the stadium.
Wow!
And then I'm on a transmitter that has to sort of just, the only difference being with, say, radio and all the other sort of real high-tech equipment is that there's always a delay, whereas obviously there can't be a delay for the listeners that hear, because even just a 3 second, 5 second, they miss the actual moment. But so we've got roughly round about, I'd say about 60 to 80 headsets that are out every game.
Wow.
And we've probably got a core of about 40 to 50 West Ham fans that take up the service all season. So they range from like my brother, who's totally blind, to like those that are visually impaired, those that, and those sort of like who are sort of like maybe a little bit more mature than me and you, right? That are sat quite high up in the back,
a little bit further away. No, I get that.
Similar to where we probably are, right? Who just can see what's going on but can't quite make out
the players' numbers.
And we do offer it to the away fans as well.
Oh, fantastic!
So even like away fans can come in, and if they need the service, they can have a headset. So that sometimes is, I'm used to that now, but sometimes if it's a real close game or a real sort of, I have to emphasise, yes, you're playing well, but West Ham, you need to pick up here. Come on, mate.
It must be strange for them as well, is it? Because obviously you're going to be, it's a West Ham service, isn't it, that you're providing? So for the vast majority. But That's amazing. Just again, like all these things are just like that's like part of doing this channel. I've sort of really been humbled by finding out all these other bits of the club and the fan base, which I never knew about. So like even like obviously the stuff that you've done, I never really knew much about. And then the same as I don't know the Indian Hammers and people like that, and all the American guys. It's just amazing.
No, you're
And
right.
I'm sure.
You're right. And this is why, like like I said to you earlier, when you got in touch with me and all that, it's sort of like as much as the club will do sort of like a write up or something in their program or on their website every so often, but things like this is going to be amazing to sort of use and sort of get out there, because I do think that's my main goal, is to make sure that every person, no matter what of disability or whoever you are, if there's an opportunity to go and watch football, you go and watch it. And if I can help by providing the voice and all of that, then I'll happily do that. And that's my sort of next goal, is to sort of see how far we can take it in terms of sort of like like you said, like I did one of the women's games. When they did the women's game, I've done a couple of the under 23. You know what I mean? Just even if there's no one, it's just to know you're providing it. And even if there's only one person listening to me, at least they're getting something. Still just as important as whatever. But no,
right. You're right. I mean, there's fanatics. I mean, every fan is most obviously people have different levels of fanaticism. Is that right? Yeah. For the fans, and there's probably are some blind fans who would love to do all the under 23s and love to do the women's game. Obviously, that's they're moving to Dagenham Redbridge. So so it's obviously that opens it up to new people attending there as well. So no, it's great, man. It's amazing. I think it's and it's must be a privilege for you as well, knowing you're providing that service. Yeah,
it is. It's and like I said earlier on, and it's my team as well. So to be sat there, talking about it, it's just even adds to it. And I just the opportunity is just fantastic. And I'm just, as I said earlier, like talking about other. The women's team. I'm just trying to get other people involved as well. Trying to as I said earlier, I work in a school, so I've got some of my students who are keen to learn about how to commentate and things like that. So I'm trying to sort of get them involved and things like that. But it's definitely a privilege.
And obviously you must have had all the fun with all the exam results recently.
Which is a lovely after yesterday. Like obviously, we had the A-level results come out. I've got GCSEs coming out. Yeah, it's this is lovely to have this sort of moment
just this break up.
Get away from it all. But no, yeah. So it's tough. It's tough. Whatever it would have been, it would be tough. But I'm lucky enough to work in a really good school that has really good support, and the students I work with, I don't teach. I sort of support them in a mentoring sort of youth work sort of way and pastoral way. So I get to know them really well. So it's kind of good that whatever they get, they know that I'm there to support them and guide them and help them on whatever they want to do in the future. So
that's good, man. That's good. Right, let's go on to 11, because obviously that's the point. That's the point of the show.
Yeah, before people turn off and think they can get on with it.
No, do you know what? I think it's the other way around. I think most people love it's the stories. I think it's every story is genuine, and I think the 11. It's not necessarily. Not necessarily about the people they pick, but it's the reasons why I think that people like. And as you said, exactly. And in terms of obviously, you know the rules. The only rule is you have to be alive to have seen them play. And obviously, you have a fair spread. Let's be fair.
Let's be fair.
I can see the greyness in your beard, James.
Yes, I know.
I've shaved myself a little bit down, so it's not so obvious now. But I
think it's going to go because of the wearing of the mask situation.
I mean, I'm a glass.
Sort of like
Yeah, I mean, it must buff out But I'm a glasses wearer, and I still haven't got used to. I still fog up, and particularly at London Stadium, because it's quite a close atmosphere. London Stadium is quite sticky, isn't it? Always is. Particularly, obviously, because I have to walk all the way right to the top. So
I know what that's like.
I'm not the fittest man.
I will defend you, and I will help you out here, because although you said earlier on there's a lift and you get in a lift, that doesn't really take you anywhere. It only takes you literally halfway of your journey to the very top.
Exactly. And then 100.
I would defend.
I did count how many steps, but I forgot 100 and something. It's ridiculous. But I hate them. But anyway, so you're 11 now. I believe, James, you've got a different, as you mentioned, you have a different twist on it. What's the twist?
I could go sort of and go for my favourite 11.
Sure,
the best 11. But because obviously at the end of this season just gone, it would have been 20 years and 20 seasons. I've sort of decided to do my Hammers 11 of 11 players that have given me a commentary moment.
Yeah.
So like they've done something and I can recall it and remember it even to this day, that it was a real moment to be in the stadium and to sort of like pick up on it, and it changed the way I commentated, or there was a moment that happened that made me think I've got to talk about this even more, and this is even special. And so that's how I've done it. So there's a few obvious ones, and there's a few sort of like that are a little bit personal, but once I tell the story of each,
brilliant. This is going to be. I'm looking forward to this already. Right, we'll start between the sticks.
Yes, yeah. I've gone for 4-4-2, although it could be a 4-3-3, but we'll get on to that. In the sticks, right? Again, I've not gone for my favourite, but I've gone for a goalkeeper that I think did really well for us, and I think everyone was so pleased that when they weren't pleased when he left, but they were pleased where he ended up and winning a Premier League medal. Yes. So obviously I'm going for Adrien in goal, which the reason for that is that those that recall, it's not that long ago, just in the FA Cup third round against Everton at Upton Park, there was the replay that went to penalties. And it ended up getting, I think, 8-8. And the two goalkeepers were about to take a penalty each. The Everton keeper missed. And then Adrien had the chance to take us into the next round. But at this stage, it was quite late. And we'd had extra time. It was like a real late.
It was really late, yeah.
And the atmosphere was there. And I just remember the moment I put this in was because I was... and I have a co-commentator, and I will mention them during the course of it. But on this occasion, it was who's still with me, Michael. He does the co-commentary with me. And Adrien, he got the ball, put it down, took it off. And then it was like... I remember saying, like, Adrian's going to take it, this to win it. And then the famous line came out, he's taken his gloves off. It was like a real sort of moment of like, you know, that sort of like moment of like, he's taking the gloves off.
Yeah.
I'm thinking my listeners can't see that. Yeah. And they need to know that that's quite a pivotal, you know, he's taken his gloves off. And the noise just said it all.
Yeah.
And then he just slid into the corner. And so he makes it as my goalkeeper for giving me a moment of like commentary, is the fact that I was saying, and he's taken his gloves off.
Yeah.
And we went through.
And you're probably never ever going to say that line in reference to
I don't think I will. And you sort of think at the time, we'd won the cup. It was only the third round.
Do you know what? I didn't remember it was the third round. That's the crazy thing. And you're right. It was like the football equivalent, or the football goalkeeper's equivalent of a mic drop, wasn't it? It was like, right, okay, that's it. That's it. Gloves off. I don't need to put them back on. Yeah.
Had enough of this. I won't need them. Bang.
And it's strange because obviously both goalkeepers took the penalty. It was like the 8th penalty or 9th penalty. And there's another couple of outfield players there. You know, it's like it was just like weird.
It was sort of. I can't even remember. Actually, I should have looked that up and sort of thought, who actually did? Who didn't want one?
Who bottled it? Who bottled it? That's what people have forgotten. But basically, what will happen is James Kent Hammers or Kent Irons will comment who bottled it on the video. So we'll find out.
Good. Yeah, I want to know. Anyone, I want to know. Yeah. I want to know.
Right.
Right.
Good man.
Where do you want to go now? Left back or right back?
You go in order what you've written down, man.
Right. I'll go full back.
Yeah.
This is an interesting one. I don't think he will make many. But for me, he does. He's actually a personal favourite player at the time. But I'm going for Thomas Repka.
Yeah.
Because despite what's happened in the last few years, actually, but that's not relevant. But I'm not going to talk about all that. But I just remember when he joined, everyone knows he got sent off in his first game, I think it was, and then he got sent off a few games later. He ended up with like quite a few, like I think it was about 4 red cards. But the thing that got me with Thomas, and again comes back to the commentary, is that I remember one game. I can't remember who it was against, but he left the pitch. We weren't playing well. I think we were losing, and he left the pitch and started having a row with one of the fans near the tunnel. And it was like, what's going on? Like, and he had to be pulled away as everyone was leaving. And obviously with the commentary, I have to try and I can't just end when the whistle goes. I have to sort of talk a little bit and go on. And I sort of think, oh, this is a real psycho sort of like player. Yeah. And it was sort of in my mold of like, yes, a real sort of battler, but you can't start arguing with his fans. But what the actual moment led to was that even though because of that, I think he played really well. I think a lot of the fans liked him. Yeah. And it really came to a head in his last game.
Yeah.
I think it was Fulham in his last game when he actually left the pitch afterwards in tears. He was actually physically crying,
Yeah.
and I thought that's real passion there. That's real moment. I don't think he really wanted to leave or whatever, but okay. He started his career with West Ham being sent off. He then had a row with someone in the stand, but yet in his final game, he showed real emotion.
Yeah.
And to commentate that and to explain that to sort of the listeners was like, oh my God, this is Thomas Repka. You can tell he really loves the club. He's actually crying. He's leaving. He doesn't want to go. Do you know what I mean? And I just think
I know exactly what you mean.
He makes it in for that reason. So,
and we love someone like that, don't we? You're right. Oh. We love a psycho. We love a guy who's just on the edge, isn't he? And since he's retired, he's been even more on the edge, to be honest. But and again, that adds to the mystique of him, doesn't it? That adds to the sort of the character that is Thomas Repka. And you're right, and that's what I think. That whole sort. I remember that last game because I think it was like the last 20 minutes. Literally the fans super dumb, and literally I don't think he's probably ever had people sing like that to him. No. And he was like, I mean, when we signed him, he was our, he was a record signing from Florentine, I believe. And super Thomas Repka, love it. Okay, who's next?
Right, the other fullback won't be no surprise really. And there's two little stories here with him. Is obviously it's Julian Dix.
Yeah,
he's got to be in it mainly because even prior to starting the commentary that I did from 2000, the actual advert that I did with my brother for that famous drinks company was stemmed around the 2-2 draw with Man United and Dix's penalty.
Yeah.
And if I don't know how you can do it or whether you want, or if people want to just look it up, if they type in Blind Fan, whatever on YouTube, you get the actual main of the advert is me talking about Dixie putting the ball down. It's complete mayhem. Dixie steps, and then my brother's reaction just sums up the whole first experience of actually, even though I'd been sitting with my brother and standing with him on the North Bank and in the bobby, telling that's the first time anyone had ever videoed it or seen it. Yeah. And it was just a real moment. And then to link it in to the fact that he was my first ever game that I did was his testimonial against Atletico Bilbao. Like that was the first time I'd ever sat in the press box, in the old press box, even before the Dr. Martin stand or whatever it was called. Old, where you had to walk up this one little small flight of stairs. You could have no one coming down or the same way. And then you had all these pillars. I just remembered it was the first game I officially did was in against Atletico Bilbao, his testimonial. Which I remember there was a bit of a fight in that as well. I think
possibly
there was a bit of a brawl in that. I know West Ham lost, I think 2-1 in the end, but Julian Dix gave me a couple of really good moments in commentary prior to actually ever getting to where I am now. But even he was the beginning, and like when he came back with Bilic in his partnership for Man, he's become. I know him a little bit well now. He's a real fan's favourite. He's really good. He's met my brother a few times. He's like really, he's a top man. So he had to come in, but I think it's justified in terms of my Hammers 11 and the commentary moments that he was the start of it. He was the start of it and deserves to be in it. So
totally. Julian Dix is in.
Right.
Yes, and obviously he'll be there next year. Even Slab.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm hoping that game ain't till near the end of the season at home, so I can get there myself. But
and also, so we're not having to beat them to stay up.
No,
you know the West Ham way, Jason, won anyone.
Well, there was always that thought that we'd be going down as they were coming up, So at least we get the thing.
When you look at this, but that's the thing. When you look at the fixture list, every West Ham fan does it. They look at the last game of the season. They go, "Okay, who do you have to beat to stay up?" Before we've even kicked the ball, we'll be like, "Right, okay, all right, we've got to win."
That's winnable. This is in like July. We're saying that's winnable in May, so we stay up.
It's all sorted already.
Anyway,
Julian's in. Who's next, man?
Centre backs. Right? My centre backs. I'll go for this in this order. This is an unusual one, but I think those that remember this moment will understand why he's in. It's Christian Daly.
Christian Daly.
Right, Christian Daly is in because when West Ham were some people say we still are a yo-yo club. In 2004, I think it was, we were in the playoff semi-final against Ipswich, I think it was, and he scored the winner. And I've never known Upton Park, although it got better towards the end. But that night, the atmosphere then was just amazing. I know Matthew Everton scored the one that gets back in the game, but he didn't quite make my midfield. I needed a centre back, and I started looking back. I remember Daly. It may have been even a lucky goal or something, but it was the winning goal that got us to the final. Albeit I think we lost to Palace, I think, in the final.
Yeah, Palace in the first one. Yeah,
but it was just the atmosphere, and a lot of people say that with the bowling ground, Upton Park, you were always starting in a positive way when it was under the lights. There was always that saying that West Ham under the lights at Upton Park was amazing. And that whole atmosphere of that was just sort of like brilliant, absolutely superb. So he makes it in because he gave us that sort of atmosphere of like winning something and getting to a final, albeit that we went.
And I remember and I remember that game particularly because he had that sort of almost Churchwellian speech, or more Braveheart probably, Christian Daly afterwards. I remember that and he was like, "Oh, we're going to go to Cardiff, we're going to win," and everyone's like, "Yeah, we are," and obviously we didn't. But
I think also he doesn't get as much credit because he played really well for us, and I think he had a good couple of seasons, and he was kind of like, I think he had his own sort of like fan base that really understood what he offered. And I know in the season prior, I think, he played every minute. I think in one of the seasons, I think it was the season we went down. Funny enough, but he was, good player, player.
I did like him. All right, we could put Christian Daly, and he had a great song named after him. So,
yeah, don't get me singing. That'll end it straight away. next to Daly is, and again, this is an obvious reason, but I do think he's a good player, and I think towards the end of his time. It was a real shame because of injury, but Winston Reid. Yeah. Winston Reid, I think, was an outstanding centre back for us. I know in listening to a few other of your people you've had on, they've said I remember people have said the story of him coming and people thought, who's it going to be? Because it said it was like a player, an international played in a World Cup and all of that. But I think over the years he played, I think he was solid. I think he played well. But he gets in because he obviously scored the last goal at Upton Park.
Yes.
And to get that moment. And to sort of like really sort of, for him to have that, and for me as a commentator to see that, when it was sort of Pyatt crossed it in, he didn't really get that. He got a really good flick on it, and the Man United keeper, almost saved it.
Yeah,
but it was just the fact that
it went sort of through his hands, didn't it?
Yeah, it's sort of. And I just think like Winston Reid, he scored it. I can't. If I'm doing this, my Hammers 11, he has to be in it because not just because he's a good player, but he gave that winning goal. On that special night, and that special night was amazing. I talked about the atmosphere when Christian Daly before, but the atmosphere on that night was just the whole. You would know yourself the whole experience of like the delayed kickoff, everything. The sort of like the game itself was up and down. It was never and like people forget we scored Antonio scored only 4 minutes before Reid got the winner. It was like literally sort of really close, them two goals.
It really was,
We just recovered from equalising with Antonio, and then we scored. It was like, and it was literally hang on. But no, yeah. So Winston Reid makes it in for that.
And that also must have been like it was a late night for you, that's for sure as well. I think to describe did you have to do the sort of the post match?
It was really quite a good moment because if you remember, like the club put out all T-shirts, I think, on the seats and all that. So I remember going on air quite early and sort of talking and reminiscing and talking about sort of like what was and then after the presentation, it was all about like I remember saying things like despite the late kickoff, I know it's late, you've got to stay. It's the last ever. It doesn't matter if you've got work tomorrow. It doesn't matter how old you are. You've got to stay. There's they're now putting out this sort of like mat. They've opened a side gate. I don't know why they've opened the side gate. They've got a sort of a stand in the middle of the pitch. It started to rain.
Yeah.
Ben Shepherd comes out. There's and I'd already.
Exactly.
I didn't know any of that. I weren't told anything.
Why did they tell you that?
Well, I should have asked. I don't know, but and I probably would have been told. But I just and throughout the whole afternoon and evening, you just saw so many ex-players arriving and sitting in various places around the press box and outside. You sort of, and then the taxis started coming in, and you sort of the build-up of it was like, who's going to get out of the cab? Who's going to, what players are going to, and I just remember it really raining, and I'm thinking, what's the time like? What's the time here? It's like, what's the last train from Upton Park like?
I know, everyone missed it.
But no one's like, but yeah, so it was lovely, a lovely evening, but unbelievable atmosphere.
And I always remember driving back because I drove and just driving around around the back streets, and you just saw people literally walking down the road with like a 12-foot advertising hoarding under their arm. I'm thinking, how are they going to get us on the train? You know, but they didn't care, and it was just like, it was one of those. It was just the whole. I mean, it was just the whole thing was so West Ham, you know. It had to piss down. It had to all be delayed because it was twice as many people outside as there was inside. You had,
amazing.
I mean, there's the story of Billy who turned around because the traffic, and so we had an empty taxi. We had to move the fireworks to the beginning because it was too delayed, and the Newham Council would put fireworks after 10:30. And it was just, but I wouldn't want it any other way. It was held together with spit and sawdust at the end because it all had to change. And actually, that's West Ham. If it was really polished,
it wouldn't have got that sort of. And I think that is, as you say, and I think that is what every West Ham fan would have wanted. The way it was done, because as you say, it's typical West Ham. You don't want everything too set and it runs like clockwork. There needs to be something that goes wrong, because then you get them moments. You get them moments of like, and I think that's why I think so many people, like as they say, and West Ham, even if they don't support them, it's a club that they like. They like to know the history. They like to, they miss them moments going to Upton Park. They miss the sort of stories they miss. Do you know what I mean? And I just think it's sort of. That whole sort of experience was just, I wouldn't change anything. I don't think anyone else would. I just think the only thing is that at the end, it's like the reality kicked in then of like, actually, that is it. Right, okay.
Lights went up and everyone's
and I remember being in the press area, the press box upstairs. I remember the stewards were doing their best trying to encourage people to go home. And they were saying the stadium is definitely going to be locked by midnight. You can't be here. You've got to go. You've got to go. But there we go. So that's more like right midfield. Right, I'll let you lead. Midfield. Right. Okay. Right. I'm just going to check. Yeah. Right. So I'm going to go for Mark Noble in the middle. Mark Noble in the middle. He's going to play in the middle for a number of reasons. Over 500 games. I think as a commentator over 20 years, I've sort of been on his journey.
Totally.
I think it's like there's moments. There's one in particular which I'm going to talk about very quickly in a second. But there's the other thing I think what I want to point out, because there's been a lot of talk about him. And next season, who knows? Declan stays with us. Hopefully he does. If Mark gives him the captaincy, that's fair enough, as long as Mark gets another seat. I just think the only reason I say all this is that when West Ham are really struggling over a period of a few games, and he's not played or something, you just miss him. You miss him in that midfield, that Mr. West Ham that just gets. And I'd rather still have. I just think we've got some good players now. Sutek after the lockdown was superb. But I just think he sort of brings so much of like what West Ham is all about. And I think for me, on a personal note, he still keeps that history of like being a young player coming through Upton Park, the bowling, all of that, and being a fan, live around the corner.
Being a fan who's a player.
And from a commentary point of view, it has to be, which I'm sure people will recall, the FA Cup replay against Man United at Upton Park, where he literally manhandled and picked up Herrera, I think it was.
Off the pitch.
And literally, we did lose in the end, but I think he literally summed up what West Ham meant and became like a fan. It was like as if he was playing on Sunday league football.
You're right, It's probably
he was playing for his Sunday team.
You're totally right.
And he literally thought, I'm not having this ref, you're taking far too long. Up you get, Teller. And I just thought to commentate that and try and explain it to my listeners who are probably thinking, why is like everyone cheering? Like was not difficult, but I was trying to maintain not to sort of like go to sort of like, he's literally just chucked him up and chucked him out. Like, it was literally, he's literally just helping him off the pitch a little bit. He's just helped him to his feet, you know what I mean? And sort of like, So that sort of was that
Right.
moment.
And you're right. That's probably like I can't really think of many times where he's been playing where you've seen the fan appear. Because obviously when he celebrates, every footballer celebrates, but he celebrates a little bit more because he's a fan. But you're right. That was probably a chink in his armour. Do you know what I mean? It's like it was almost like, no, I'm a fan and I want to win this game and just get off the pitch. And it was like, and I remember it was just so funny as well.
It's just a moment. You sort of think like, and that's why I think now. I'm hoping he gets like next season, and then like he may not, whatever. But I think a lot of people have said it. He'll stay in the club. They might get him doing some coaching. I know he does. He talks to a lot of the academy players. I know he's. Do you know what I mean? I just think that like he's someone for the future in terms of coaching, managing, and all that. But I just don't want people to forget what he is. And I just think that in the last 2 or 3 seasons, I think everyone could say we missed Mark Noble in that middle, just to get the team going, just to link everything, just to sort of. He may not be the best player now, but he can pass the ball. He can pass the ball. He can, and I think it was interesting seeing where David Moyes played him.
Yes,
in the last few, you know what I mean? Just sort of like, knowing that like, he wants him in the team a bit because he gives you that, but he needs to position him so he can be effective. So I think it'd be interesting next season, and if it means we keep Declan, then that's good as well. I think
Yeah,
I think we need to keep.
I don't think there's any small part. The rise of Declan has been down to Mark Noble's tutelage, and by keeping Mark at the club, I think you can only assume that would encourage Mr. Rice to stay at the club a little bit longer.
Yes,
is what we all want. And you're right. After Mark goes, when he retires, in terms of the playing side, we know Dex. Who the club he supports really, although when he talks in interviews, he has an incredible affection for the club because obviously Chelsea didn't want him when he was a 14.
I think that's the one thing that I think will niggle him is that like they didn't want him at 14, and if it helps us, and I think like you say when he talks about the club like us West Ham, he comes across But I think you're right. I think like when Mark Noble does eventually. Retire or leave. It's interesting to see who comes through, who's like, and I think it's really important because of like moving from, the bowling to London that like we don't forget. Do you know what I mean? And I just think
no, I know exactly.
But anyway, next to Mark Noble is Ross. Right. I'm just conscious of time. I can talk forever, mate. I tell you. But I've got a few good ones coming up. That's all.
Good.
No, next to Mark Noble is Jack Collison. Jack Collison, nice. I think is for me because of injury, he didn't have the career that he deserved.
No,
I just think he a fantastic player. Came from Cambridge, I think. He sort of like he just had a real sort of ability. He reminded me of Michael Carrick. Carrick, I always think Carrick was always underrated and still is and still was, even when he was at United and all of that. But Jack Collison, I think if he didn't have the injury and all that, he would have had he would have gone on and been like he had a good career with Wales, like he had a good international career. But I think he would have done well for Wales, and I think he would have done really well for West Ham. But the reason I put him in terms of commentary, and it sort of sums it up, is that I remember, he lost his father tragically in a motorcycle accident, I think it was. And he was told after a game, I think it was against Tottenham or something like that. But what a reason I put it in is that we played Millwall in the League Cup a few days later. And playing Millwall anyway is a massive game. And to commentate on it, you've got to be careful. You've got to be sort of like, not too sort of like biased towards West Ham. You've got to sort of like balance it. Because like I said, sometimes there are away fans listening to what I'm talking about and things like that. So, but I just remember it. There was loads of issues going on outside the stadium. There was some issues going on inside the stadium on that night. It was the League Cup. I think it went to extra time and all that. Yeah. But when the final whistle went, I just remember, I think it was Jack Collison, he was just literally in tears. He'd literally played through so much emotion of the sad, death of his father and all of that, and just played through. It just showed me that I'm not saying he wouldn't have been like that if it was another team, but I think because we played Millwall, I think the atmosphere was very hostile, very sort of, this is the team where you want to play and you've got to, at whatever cost, win. You've got to like, and I just think to commentate on, him leaving the field upset. I remember, he had a couple of I can't remember his name, the guy who was like head of security, always on the tunnel.
Oh yeah, Ben was there as well.
He was sort of like, and Ben was, and I just remember there was fans were trying to get on the pitch to console him, but they were sort of being misinterpreted as if they were trying to come on. Of course, and I think the whole moment always lives with me. That it summed up Jack, and I think Jack then went on had really bad injuries. But then he played in the playoff final against Blackpool.
No,
he got sat, and and he still showed it. Yeah. And I just think that he deserves to be in my. But that night against Millwall was a moment.
Actually, I asked him about that when I interviewed him. So I didn't, because again, when I spoke to him, and it was like we interviewed, and I thought, I asked about it because obviously, it's a few years on. It's it's still not nice, but he was so thankful, and he said, there was no way I wasn't going to play, because it was like my dad was a massive West Ham fan. He was talking about the Millwall game before we played Tottenham, and he was driving back looking forward to that. And obviously that's when he unfortunately died. And he said there was no way I weren't going to play. He says, and I didn't think about it until he said I got out the tunnel, and I think it was Neil Harris, who he knew quite well. Put his arm around him, and he thought he was going to go, but as soon as he crossed that line, he knew he had a job to do.
Yeah.
And then as soon as the whistle went, this emotion came out, and Ben and what's name were right ready to sort of call him off. But
get him.
Yeah. But he said it had to do it, and I said and I think that will all forever endear him to the West Ham fans. Because everyone there has been in that situation where they've lost someone, and to do that and still put in a good performance and still beat Millwall, it's like still win.
You sort of but no, so he's in. So then either side of Collison and Noble, this is where it could go a 4-3-3, but with parade license, I'm going to go for Joe Cole.
Yep.
Which wasn't. Only for this is again, I think Joe Cole, fantastic player. You heard about him when he was really young. You heard all about the potential and everything. But what makes me, and this is different for me, and it may not be everyone's viewpoint, but what makes Joe Cole different to say some other players, I'm not going to mention any names, is that he started with us. He then left us, but when he came back. And the reason I'm putting him in terms of commentary, I just remember his first 2 goals once he returned. The passion. If you ever watch him on YouTube, I think one was against Red. I can't think of the other. But the passion of when he scored, he literally took his top off, slid into the corner. It showed real passion for West Ham. And this is a player that had started with us, had a good career, then moved on, did well in his other clubs, did all that. When and then come back, but still had that passion, still had that sort of young hammer in him that loved the club, and he scored a few goals when he came back, not many, but whenever you watch him, the passion after scoring was amazing. And you just felt that you could almost forgive him for going off and winning this and doing that. Do you know what I mean? Because he literally, and then when you listen to him now, when he does his media work and things like that, he speaks very well. He talks very well about when he's asked about West Ham and the academy of the club and what needs to happen and all of that. And there was talk of him coming in to some sort of coaching role, I believe, when Moyes came back originally. I think I'm not 100% sure.
I think they were basically looking at anyone
who had some. Me and you could have had a chance. I
could have shown them. Show them something a bit different in the last third.
But no, so he makes it in because trying to explain that to the listeners and some of them would have been begrudging someone like him coming back, and we know certain players left. We could all make a good 11 of players that were in the academy and then went on and won things. Do you know what I mean? You could have them in, and I've got a list of players that could have been in this for other reasons, but Joe Cole makes it in because he still showed that he had the passion for the club. When he returned after what he had all that success, and he's a nice guy as well. Really down to our nice guy. He's done a lot charity work, I think, in the lockdown situation and all of that.
NHS,
So he's in there. So alongside, so I've got Collison, Noble, Cole. Then I've got 3 more players, and I'll try and not be quick, but quicker than the last 7 or 8.
Don't matter, James.
Right. So in the midfield could be on the other side, or he could play in the 3 with the other 2 I'm going to name afterwards. Is Mikel Antonio. Purely and simply because I'm trying to get, not because I'm trying to get a wide range of the 20 years, but Mikel Antonio is in because he never gives up.
No.
He tries. I think after many years now with him, we're all panicking when he gets the ball or makes a 20-yard run. Is he going to finish it? Is he going to make it? Whatever. But he scored, although some people, like, he didn't score the very first goal at the London Stadium.
No, he didn't. For
That
Gooley.
was yeah. So it was sort of like, but Chiarte scored. But he scored the very first Premier League goal for West Ham. Bournemouth, correct. Near the last minute, I think.
Yes.
He scored really late on, because I remember, like, Bournemouth, the sort of, like, we had all the hoo-ha with that Super or whatever, the Europa qualifying cup, the Juventus, all that, and then we're playing Bournemouth, and we're still 0-0 at about 88 minutes. You sort of think, like, what's this new stadium? It's gonna
say, well, West Ham.
So there was that moment, but the biggest moment I like is bearing in mind that the listeners are getting used to the new stadium and their new surroundings, and everything's changing, and we all know it's not quite West Ham. Although the coloured seats are claret and blue and things like that. But I remember, I think it was beginning of last season, I can't exactly remember when, but they laid a carpet.
Yeah.
They finally laid a carpet to make sure it looked like a claret and blue. And I remember describing it to the listeners just before kick-off and all that. And lucky enough, I can go down to, like, the corner bit and go on. Yeah. So I had a little fit, and I thought it's proper. It's like proper. I could do this at my house.
It's nice, isn't it?
It's
a nice carpet.
Like, but then what happened was Antonio scored a goal. Yeah. And if you remember, he literally, and he was going through all these celebrations, and they're really good to commentate on. The Simpsons, the Bart Simpsons, the sort of French Prince Bel-Air or whatever it's called, and all the sort of other things, But in that, he's literally laid down and started stroking the sort of new carpet and all of that. And to try and describe that to them, I just thought, how can I be saying that there's a professional footballer scored a goal and is now laying on a carpet stroking? Like, where does that fit in?
It was like James Bond-esque villain. You've been expecting me.
I finally arrived. You sort of think, we're playing the Premier League here. So Antonio makes it in for that moment of commentary for him. So yeah, and like I said earlier on, I just think, like, he's since we come back after lockdown, thank God he was in the team.
Thank God for him. Although the only thing I'm surprised about, James, he hasn't done yet, since obviously Kevin Nolan's been on board, is he hasn't done the chicken dance as a celebration. I've said it before. Yeah. And Mikel, it's so obvious. It's almost too obvious.
Yeah, too obvious to do, but it needs to be done. You've got Kevin Nolan on the bench.
Exactly. But what I think he should do is, rather than I reckon he should resurrect sort of like old celebrations, like the Roger Milla Italia 90, which I got I did that once at school and got reprimanded by my headmaster. He said, "Stop making an exhibition of yourself, Budden, and get back to the corner." Because I was in goal. I remember that, because it was like, again, we divert. I was in goal and I got injured and we didn't have any subs, so I ended up playing up front and scored a brace and won the game, as you would do, And I remember that. But no, like Roger Milla, like even like the Alan Shearer one, I think there's no one's done that. No one's like done sort of like a review.
That's a good idea. I like that. I like that a lot.
Mikel, look, hook me up. I can help you out. And obviously the Kevin Nolan dance should be the first game.
He needs to do it. He needs to do that. He needs to do
that. Mikel's in.
He's in. Right, and then the last two, I'm going for Dimitri Payet.
Yeah.
Very simply, all right, it ended on a sour note, and I remember being in the press room when Bilic spoke about the situation, and he spoke so well. Slaven Bilic, I like Slaven Bilic a lot. He spoke really well about the Payet situation.
He did.
But again, I just recalling it in commentary to try and describe a type of player similar to like Carlos Tevez and all of that, but try and describe Payet to the listeners and the flamboyance and the sort of like sometimes arrogance, but in a nice way of like trying
confidence.
The confidence.
Yeah.
But I remember one occasion, which we'll all remember, is the free kick against Crystal Palace at Upton Park.
How could you possibly
like that is just like, I'll tell you exactly what happened. That's why he's in my Hammers 11. Is that I remember they set up a long wall, and I remember thinking, I thought at the time they had about 6 or 7, but I think it turned out they had about 8 in it when you look back at it. They set it up, and I remember saying like, "Oh, Payet's going to have a go here. It's obvious." You know, Palace have like got everyone back in the box, but they've got a large wall. Blah, blah. Right, he's gonna like. It was along the lines of, right, yeah, everyone's ready. To me, could do with a goal here. He steps up. Oh, it's gone wide. Oh, like literally, I was like saying it had gone wide.
Yeah.
The way he took it, my first initial, because where I sat at Upton Park, as you know, the press box, because it was to the left of me.
Yes.
So Trevor Brookings stand. I had a really good angle of it. And when he kicked it, I swear, I thought it was going into the away end. It was like it literally, but it moved so quick that it literally just went in that top. And I remember it was probably one of the only occasions, not the only, but very rare, where I just didn't say anything. I was like, what? You know, and I remember going back saying, it's a goal, by the way. You know what I mean? It's like, he scored it. It was an unbelievable free kick. And that's what you got with Payet. You got moments of like magic.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and you sort of like, and again, it was like typical being a West Ham fan, like in the World Cup when he played really well for France. You know, everyone's on board. Like, you know, we've got the best player in the world. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. We're going to, you know what I mean? You sort of think like, here we go again. We're building ourselves up.
Yeah.
When are we going to come back down?
Yes, exactly. Because you're right, because Real Madrid, you know, it was like, no, we're not going to take less than 60, 70 million for him. It's like...
but yeah, he makes it in for that free kick alone. Yeah. And there was other occasions he scored. I think he scored a good goal at the London Stadium. Can't forget against who that was.
Yeah, against Middlesbrough.
Yeah, took it round a lot. And all that. But yeah, it was just a shame the way it ended. But he still makes my team for that. And then my final player is Paolo Di Canio. Has to be.
Yeah.
For a number of reasons. When I got the call from the club, would I be interested in doing a test run? We've seen the advert. We've had a lot of interest. They had some guy, I can't remember his name. You're talking like, you know, in year 2000, who was doing stuff for the internet or doing something. And he was going to commentate on the first half of this game. And I would do the second half. And the game turned out to be West Ham against Bradford. The famous 5-4.
Brilliant.
Who'd have called, like, you know, someone up there was looking at me thinking, you need a break, James. We're going to give it to you. Do the second half. And I'm thinking, my God. So, like, I'm sitting, at this time, I'm still sat in the Bobby Moore lower. I've got, like, this microphone thing. I'm still sitting next to my brother. And I'm now sort of like, I've got other people from the club listening to me or something. And it just turns out to be one of the best games you would need as a commentator, because it had everything. It had so even beforehand, like, you know, Stephen Bywater had to come on pretty early on. You know, like, it was sort of, and it was like, and the thing was, the second half, it gave you that sort of like, you know, we were 4-2 down to Bradford. We pulled it back to 5-4. There was Di Canio arguing with Lampard about the penalty, but even before then, he wanted a penalty every time he went in the box. And started, you know, calling to Harry, I'm coming off the pit, you know. So there was so much going on to talk about that it was just like a brilliant game to commentate on as a tester for you. And then, like, you know, I remember vividly, and I double checked this prior to coming on, because I always remember he argued with Lampard to take the penalty, and it was like a real crucial time. And I think it was like, right, okay. And then in the end, he took it, and he, in typical Di Canio style, just nonchalantly just walked up and slid it in, you know, lovely, like, you know. But what I think, not people forget, but like, obviously he's then had that argument with Lampard, but Lampard got the winner to make it 5-4. But Di Canio was the one that sent the ball through, held it up at the edge and slid it across to Lampard instead of trying to create an opening for himself. I sort of think Di Canio still in his mind, despite the fact that, like, whether he knew and thought like, oh, he gave me the penalty, I'll try and get it to him. and Lampard slid it in the top corner. It was just a moment. And then obviously, he's sort of Di Canio's a fan's favourite. He's got West Ham in his blood. I think I don't know how. I think he's just grateful that Harry gave him the chance after all that nonsense with Sheffield Wednesday and the pushing of the ref and all that. But Di Canio makes it in because, again, similar to like Julian Dix when I was saying earlier on about the advert. If I didn't have Julian Dix in that game on that advert, if I didn't have had Di Canio against Bradford, I could have had a boring 0-0 to commentate on.
Yeah, you could have had,
And commentating and everything, especially audio description, and like you are bringing colour to like my listeners. They can't see, so you have to be a bit descriptive. It's a real sort of, because I've got to know over the years other radio commentators and things like that, and they're really keen on listening on how I do it, and it is pretty similar, but you just have to remember to add in things that like they may not say on the radio. The players, what colour boots they're wearing. If we sign a new player, what nationality they are. What do they look like? Do they have any distinguished sort of features, like various players over the years with different haircuts and things like that. And then if someone's warming up, who's actually warming up on the touchline? Because they will suddenly hear and sort of sound, and they're thinking,
why are they warming?
What's happening? What's happening? And although you've got to do the game, you're sort of like, and that's why I sort of like, people like Michael, who helped me out on a match day, and John, who did it before Michael, they're really big helps, because you can imagine trying to do it on your own. And I did it on my own for about 8 or 10 years. And then eventually I said, look, this is getting, because we were building it, it was like, I know I sound I can talk for a long time, but and that's funny. That's funny.
Actually, talk about the Bradford game. I interviewed, and I watched it again actually, because I'm not narcissistic or anything, but it just came up, and I thought, I watched that. It was I interviewed John Moncur, and we spoke about the that 5-4 game, because he scored, and I knew that he then let a penalty straight away in, like literally. I think he tackled Jamie Lawrence and gave a penalty away. And he said it was just the most craziest game he's ever been involved in. And Harry ripped shreds into him at half time because he'd scored and given it away. And he's like, you in that game, I just literally sat back and just laughed and just thought it was such a funny game. To be honest, Paolo should have had 2 penalties. He went down 4 times. He should have had 2 of them. But it's brilliant. It's just so funny. But that's the thing. It's fun going back and looking, and particularly, going back and double checking and actually going back, you see something else. It's like a movie that you watch a movie 2 or 3 times, and you see some more nuances in there.
You pick up things, and you just blimey, like, but and that's why I think that what you're doing on this channel, like even when I listen to the others, I sort of like you say, you go and check things. You know what I mean? It's just really good to sort of like.
I just love it, because I just love going off on tangents. Because you just. I said it the other day, I can't remember who was chatting to, and then we ended up talking about Papa Bouba Diop. It's like Papa Bouba Diop would never have come up in conversation if we were just talking about West Ham's greatest 11. You know what I mean? But he played a fair few games for West Ham at that time, and he should have a name check, same as Abdoulaye Faye. And, I take the mickey where I say, Mickey where I say, I couldn't put Bobby Moore, I have to say Javier Margas. But I mean, Javier Margas, he turned out for the Claret and Blue and
he liked to do his hair. I remember he did his hair, didn't he?
I know. I forgot he jumped out that window.
But it is strange, because even even prior to us getting in touch over the last few days, I sort of like watched the channel and been looking and thinking, who would I have? Who would I? And you go back and you sort of think, there are players that actually people will probably not forget about, but until they're reminded, actually remember, they might have only played for a season or 2. They actually did well for us. Yeah. They were the right fit at the right time.
And also, I think with some players, just the position they play mean they don't get the same credit. So, and that's why when I interview the players, it's always interesting, because people that appear in their team don't normally appear in other. So, someone like Pete Butler, for example, he is a lovely bloke. He texts me all the time. We're good friends now, but he never appears in. He was special to me, the first player I ever met. But for others, he's not in their team because he was just there, where all the players put him in. Same as Hayden Mullins is the same. I mean, when I interviewed Luke Chadwick, he put him right back just to get him in the team, and so and it's,
I think you're right. I think you're right, because there are the obvious ones, and that's why I like sort of listening to a lot of yours, because you get different, and you're reminded of players. There are certain players that will always play you know, like Julian Dix, I've got him in mine, and he'd be in the majority of everyone else's.
Of course.
You know, but there are other players, you know, and it's just sort of interesting to sort of listen to people, and I think that's what has helped is that you then get reminded of like the actual history of the club.
Yeah,
and like, you know,
I've learned so much from this.
What had gone on, and like, you know, what does go on, and what I like about it, and you probably see it, Ross, a bit. A lot of the old players come back now. West Ham finally got a grip of actually using the ex-players a lot for like, okay, it may be corporate or whatever, but they do bring a bit of a buzz, even in the press lounge. Definitely. You know, they all sit together, but they've all got time for everyone. You know, they'll always have a word or say, you know, have a photo, you know, and like, you're talking players like, you know, Stuart Slater, you know, Lomas, you know, all of them, you know, that are like, you know, good players in their time. You know, like the players I could have put in, like my actual Hammers 11, from a personal, real sort of like, not, you know what I mean? It's just, it's a very difficult one, but that's my Hammers 11 from a commentator's point of view.
And that's what, and also I think that's why people. That's why I always think, because you know you're right. You know your favourite 11 will be different, but actually it might be trickier to write your favourite 11 because there's so many players you could put in. Where I think when you put a theme or you attach something, it's slightly more easy because you're slightly restricted.
Definitely.
But
definitely.
Oh, it's been James. It's been lovely.
No.
As you said, the time has flown by.
Yeah,
you know
what
I mean? It's funny. I don't even look, and at the end, I'm like, oh god, a minute. You know, now and
thank you for allowing me to be on your channel.
Oh, don't be ridiculous!
It's
don't be ridiculous!
Been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you for your service. You know, 20 years, you get less for murder nowadays, but in it. So no, and everyone appreciates what you do. It's lovely chatting, and obviously. Thank you to everyone for watching. You know, like, share, subscribe, all that type of stuff. And until next time, for me and James, take care, everyone. Stay safe. Come on, you irons, and we'll see you again very, very soon. Take care, everyone. Bye bye.